Could it be? But me, your man, Louie T, welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. A couple of topics I wanted to get to today regarding this organization. Offensive coordinator is the thing that is probably on the forefront of most of our minds as we bypass now the Super Bowl and really focus in on, the offseason. I really think it begins this week. I'm actually disappointed in how Washington is handling all of this. John Keim reported today that the team is looking to set up an interview with former Ravens offensive coordinator Greg Roman. Now, the problem I have with this is, bro, you knew you wanted to interview Greg Roman a long time ago, right? Like, what are we waiting on? This man wasn't on a Super Bowl team's, coaching staff. This isn't like waiting on Eric Bieniemy, who's in pursuit of a Super Bowl championship. Greg Roman parted ways mutually with the Ravens over 3 weeks ago. What are we waiting on? Why haven't we already talked to this man? The last person we should be waiting on is Eric Bieniemy to make a decision. Like, what are we doing here? All right. This is asinine to me. Eric Bieniemy should, for all intents and purposes, have been the last guy we were interviewing, waiting to interview him. You get that done, and you make a decision after that. Now you're adding Greg Roman into the equation? What are we doing? You knew you wanted to talk to this guy. This didn't just pop into your mind as you were watching the Super Bowl last night and say, you know what? We should talk to Greg Roman this week. You should have done that last week or the week before that. And maybe Greg Roman wasn't taking any interviews then. I don't know. I don't know what his thought process was after he left Baltimore. Maybe they reached out to his agent and he said, hey, Greg's taking a couple of weeks to himself to decompress. We'll get back to you in a couple of weeks. That could have taken place, and maybe that's why Washington hasn't had the opportunity to talk to him. But I just find it hard to believe that you couldn't have gotten something done already. And you're just dragging this thing out like a lot further than you need to, especially if you're going to hire someone new. The sooner you hire someone, the faster you can get them to get the playbook to Sam Howell or whomever needs to have it in their hands so that they can start to get comfortable with what's going on. I mean, I don't really understand why this is taking as long as it is. You want to get it right. You want to make the right decision. I understand all of that, but it just seems like it's unnecessarily taking longer than it needs to. I'm really perturbed by them wanting to interview, not because he's a poor candidate, Greg Roman. Roman's had success with guys with a skill set of a Sam Howell, right? Like, if we're talking about what he's been able to do in this league, he had success with Colin Kaepernick. He had success with Lamar Jackson, obviously. And so he's had success with guys that were dual threat quarterbacks. We think Sam Howell has the potential to be a semblance of that. Now, he's not Colin Kaepernick. He's not Lamar Jackson, clearly. But we think he can be a red zone threat with his legs. We think he can be an extend the play type of guy with his legs. We think he can be a guy that, escapes the pocket and picks up a 15-yard gain on 3rd and 8. But in saying that, Roman has a track record of not necessarily utilizing the receivers. That was one of the biggest complaints in Baltimore. I don't know if that was all Greg Roman or if that was more of the Ravens personnel or if it was a combination of the two or what may have you. But that's the rap he's gotten, that he's big on running backs, big on tight ends, and I think that's been proven over the vast majority of his coaching career as an offensive coordinator. So I don't think that's necessarily what we're interested in here, because our receivers are our strong suit. And if you're not going to utilize them properly, then I'm not really interested in you being our next offensive coordinator. That said, they want to talk to Greg Roman. I have no issues with it. I have an issue with the fact that it's taking you this long to decide who you want to talk to. If you knew you wanted to talk to Greg Roman, why haven't you done this already? This is just, to me, you're making this process longer than it needs to be. Figure this shit out. You were waiting on Bieniemy. That's all I thought this was about. We're waiting on Eric Bieniemy so we can sit down and interview this man and see if he's the right candidate for the job. If not, we already interviewed 6 other candidates. We'll pick from that pool and we'll move forward. Now you're adding Greg Roman into the mix, and we don't even have a set date for when they're going to interview Greg Roman. You know, they could interview Eric Bieniemy, say, hey, he's cool, but we're not sold on him. We want to talk to Greg Roman. That could take place Thursday or Friday. Now you're talking about potentially next week having to wait again until this thing is resolved. Like, what are we doing? And again, it's the off season. We got nothing but time, but this shit is taking a long time. The season ended over a month ago for Washington. Figure this shit out. They fired Scott Turner on January 9th. Okay? It's February 13th. Figure this shit out. Anyway, I digress. Speaking of offensive coordinators, Eric Bieniemy is the guy that we, as a lot of us in the fan base, have looked at and said, hey, we'd like to take a chance on Eric Bieniemy. I myself have said that I'm interested in him. I'm intrigued by what he may be able to bring to the table, but I also am open-minded. I like to hear from all parties involved, including people that have had past experiences with him. Again, take everything with a grain of salt. I don't take one person's opinion as the gospel truth. I just take all of this stuff in, store it away in the memory bank, and you do with it what you will. I always tell you guys, my job isn't to shape the way you think or feel about something. It's just to present you with the information, and you do with it what you will, okay? Whatever you see fit, you do with the information what you will, but I'm just going to present it to you, all right? So here we go with Exhibit A, and I do want to come back to Eric Bieniemy here, but let's go to Exhibit A. So this is a quote, and we're going to talk about Shady McCoy, LaShawn Shady McCoy, who he's an intriguing character himself, and I liken this grudge that he has, because clearly he has a grudge with Eric Bieniemy. I liken it to the grudge that Steve Smith Sr. had with Ron Rivera. Remember, when we hired Ron Rivera, no one had anything bad to say about Rivera except for Steve Smith Sr., who didn't like his exit from Carolina, and he blamed Ron Rivera partially, along with the GM at the time, Dave Gettleman, for his exit in Carolina. He was not happy about it, and he voiced his opinion on Ron Rivera, and so he was one of the few guys that had something negative to say. So you also have to take that into consideration. If a guy has a negative experience with someone, he's going to speak negatively about him as he becomes a member of the media, hence Shady McCoy. But I still want to give you this information, and again, you do with it what you will. So this quote is from Shady McCoy. This was from last May, okay, May 2022, okay? So it's not like he just said this over the weekend. This just started to get more play recently, but he said this back in May of 2022. There's a reason why every year they keep hyping him up to go get a head coaching job or an offensive coordinator job somewhere else, and he don't get one, McCoy said or told Sirius XM's I Am Athlete Tonight in May. Okay, this is May of 2022. He talks to players a certain way, and some players would take it. I wouldn't take it. There's some questions I'm going to ask. Everyone's accountable. It's not because he's a black coach that's not getting hired. That's not the reason, okay? McCoy added that, quote, no one hires him because they know what type of coach he really is, closed quote. All right. Now, I want to add to that this statement. Now, let me give you some context to this statement here, right, that just appeared on the screen. This was after a spat between Patrick Mahomes and Eric Bieniemy going into halftime of a Week 3 loss to the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts were 0-1-1. They tied with the Texans in Week 1. They lost in Week 2, and they were a winless team. The Chiefs were 2-0 going into Indianapolis, and it was 14-10 going into the halftime break. The Chiefs were up, but there was a disagreement between Bieniemy and Mahomes, and Andy Reid had to come get Patrick Mahomes, tell him go to the locker room. Bieniemy went the other way after they were separated. And this is the tweet that Shady McCoy put out with that video. So that video went out, and he commented on that video with this tweet. All Bieniemy does is argue with the players. In all caps, knows nothing about passing or play calling. Remember, Eric Bieniemy is a running back. He's not a receiver or a tight end or anything like that. Doesn't mean he doesn't know anything about the passing game, but he said doesn't know anything about passing or play calling. So store that away. Now, this is Andy Reid. This last excerpt here is from Andy Reid. Okay, and this was based off of the comments made by Shady McCoy. This is what Andy Reid had to say in response. I'm a big LeSean fan. In my eyes, he's a future Hall of Fame running back. If you look at it statistically, he's tremendous. But he wasn't the youngest pup in the kennel here, referencing his lone season in Kansas City in 2019, which he won a Super Bowl that year, but he was not a participant in that Super Bowl. He was inactive for the latter portion of that season, including that Super Bowl game. He says he was on the backside, and sometimes that's hard to take, Reid told Pro Football Talk. Reid goes on to say, sometimes it's hard on a veteran player. Maybe their performance level isn't what it used to be, and it's hard to take sometimes. But Bieniemy is going to push you and try to maximize what you've got. That's one of his strengths. He'll come in and shoot you straight. Sometimes you want to hear it. Sometimes you don't. Okay, closed quote. So that's the take from Andy Reid's perspective, that Shady might have been a little salty because he's still thinking, and I remember hearing this from Chris Cooley, many years ago. He said, a lot of times when you're a veteran player and you're getting up there in age, you're the last one to figure out that you're not the guy that you once were. You still mentally think you can do all of the things that you used to do, and it sometimes takes a while, and maybe it takes a certain moment for you to realize, damn, I can't do the things that I used to do. And so, Reid thinks maybe there was a little bit of that where, Shady McCoy comes in, thinks he's going to be a huge contributor to that Chiefs team in 2019, ends up not being, as crucial a piece. We saw the emergence of some of the other guys that season, including Damian Williams, who was huge and instrumental in the success of the Chiefs in that Super Bowl run in 2019. But he didn't get along with Bieniemy, and Bieniemy and him probably were going back and forth. Remember, Bieniemy was a running back in college and in the NFL, and so he probably is a little harder on that position more so than any of the others because, again, that was his position of choice, as a player. So that's his position of expertise, and he probably got into it with Shady. But keep in mind, don't just dismiss Shady because he's an angry ex-player who didn't get along with him. There may be a little bit of merit to what he's saying. Don't take all of it and just it's gospel truth, but understand that there's something not there with Bieniemy. There's a reason that this man has been interviewed over 15 times and still hasn't gotten a head coaching job, or at a bare minimum, gotten an offensive coordinator job somewhere else. Why hasn't he at least gotten that? If he felt like being the offensive coordinator under Andy Reid was holding him back this entire time, why hasn't he gotten an OC job somewhere else? Maybe what LeSean Shady McCoy is saying has some validity to it. Maybe he doesn't know as much as we're led to believe because he's a part of that staff. We just assume that he's got to be bright and brilliant because he's on this staff and this offense is dynamic and explosive. Maybe he's just along for the ride. I don't know. I'll tell you this. Andy Reid gives him credit profusely. Like last night after the Super Bowl, they talked about a lot of that motion that they did and some of the things that they implemented. And he was giving a lot of his assistants credit, including Bieniemy, also Greg Lewis, who's the running backs coach, and some of the other guys that are on the staff, he was giving a lot of credit to some of these guys for helping draw up these plays and have the creativity and understanding what the Eagles wanted to do and how they could take advantage of it. And he mentioned Bieniemy several times. So, again, I don't know. I'm intrigued by Eric Bieniemy. I do think that there's a little something extra there, which is why he hasn't been hired. I don't know if you guys have seen his off-the-field behavior, but that has not been ideal, especially when he was a player. I think he's gotten better over the years as he's gotten older and out of the league as a player and more as a coach. He's been, more on the straight and narrow path, but he's got quite an extensive rap sheet, and run-ins with the law and things of that nature. So that's not appealing to teams either. And so maybe there is something to him, being a little bit abrasive with, players and, having a style that doesn't necessarily, fit what, today's NFL is all about. These athletes, while some can be coached, tough and, they understand the concept of tough love, a lot of these guys don't want to hear from a coach that's constantly in their face griping about the things they can't do, So a lot of these guys have been coddled. A lot of these guys, grew up in environments where they were the man and they're not used to somebody yelling at them and they don't deal with that very well. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm still intrigued by Eric Bieniemy and I would still love for him to get the opportunity here. But we'll see what happens, right? That's something to take into consideration. They're going to set up an interview. Washington formally requested an interview with him today. So we'll see, how that works. And obviously they just won the Super Bowl. He's probably going to be a part of the ticker tape parade. So we'll see if this process gets drawn out and strung out and they don't honestly get to meet with him until Wednesday or Thursday, right? That now, we're hearing that, Greg Roman's going to be entered into the equation, which is just bullshit to me because, again, if you knew you wanted to have access to this guy and interview him, you had all the time in the world. Why wait until now, with Eric Bieniemy now, being one of the prime targets that you're trying to interview? Why now? Why not a week ago or 2 weeks ago? Knock him out when you knocked out the rest of these candidates. Now, why wait till you're interviewing Eric Bieniemy and now you want to interview Greg Roman? It's just, to me, making the process take a lot longer than it needs to be. But it is what it is. At this point, all we can do is wait and see what they're going to do. But speaking of Ron Rivera in this process, I was on the Big Douglas show last week. For those of you who haven't checked that video out, give it a look-see. It was a great show. Had a lot of fun chopping it up with Big Doug. And we talked about a number of different topics that were very intriguing. And one of the things Doug said while on the show was, he wouldn't be surprised if Ron Rivera was fired when new ownership came in. We're going to talk about ownership here in a second. But he said, I wouldn't be surprised if the new owner came in and decided to clean house immediately. And in my mind, that's just not going to happen. It's not feasible with Ron Rivera being the coach-centric, figure in this organization. He has ties to every single member of the staff, with the exception to like maybe Randy Jordan and maybe one or two other holdovers. Everybody else was guys that he brought in from either Carolina or from the outside that he trusts, guys that he brought in that he's responsible for. You get rid of Ron Rivera and you're essentially getting rid of Martin Mayhew, Marty Herney, all the guys that are, Chris Polian, all of those guys. They're all tied to Ron Rivera, So, Doug was like, well, even though those guys are here because of Rivera, you could get rid of Rivera and keep keep Martin Mayhew and Marty Herney here and keep the entire scouting department here for the draft and go about business that way and hire the coach that you want to hire. While that's true, it's highly unlikely. And that's the point I was making to Doug. And he acknowledged that, but he's like, it's not 0% chance, right? And I said, right, facts. It's not a 0% chance, but it's a very low probability that would take place. But then there's this. And I know you guys have heard this already, but I'm going to play you the soundbite from the Mad Dog radio show from Radio Row over the Super Bowl weekend. Sean Payton was having a discussion about, job opportunities. And this was prior to him getting the job with the Denver Broncos. He was talking about all the opportunities that were out there. And I want you to listen to what he had to say in regards to this particular position and the organization as a whole. Take a listen.
Was there ever a thought about going back to New Orleans? That was out there.
Yeah. And look, it's a trickier one because it involves someone that I've hired, Dennis Allen, and we've worked together on 2 different stints. But I think in the end, for me, it was looking really closely at these teams, and then there was everyone's waiting to see what happens in Washington, and there was some interest from some potential ownership groups that are going to be bidding on, that currently have bid on that team, that were getting ahead of the game, saying,
wow,
hey, if we get awarded this team, would you? And so there were a lot of different things at play.
That's interesting.
Right? And that's a place that's had great tradition. Like when I came into the league, Adam, my first 2 years were Philly.
Of course, yeah.
My next 4 years were New York Giants.
So you know all about that.
And then my next 3 were the Cowboys. That my whole entire NFL career prior to New Orleans was NFC East. And what happened to that program?
Was that one that made you think a little bit?
Listen, that place, my uncle loved the Washington franchise. Last year, we go there to play. And I'm pregame, I'm looking up in the crowd. A third of the fans are Saints fans. And I'm like, what happened to this place?
Yeah.
That was one of the 6 pillars.
They used to fight for tickets in divorces. I mean, there's a 50-year wait list to get tickets. It's sad.
That was a special place.
It was.
So it'll come back.
I hope so.
So there are layers to that discussion that I want to have. And there are a couple of things that stood out to me about what Sean Payton had to say. The first thing is, he was contacted by a potential buyer, a suitor for this organization, and they were interested in having him come on board immediately. Upon them winning the bid, they wanted to hire Sean Payton and get rid of Ron Rivera. Wow. Okay. That's pretty interesting stuff. Okay. Actually shocked that he revealed that, to be honest with you. But that said, it just puts Ron on further notice that, and we know what it is. If Dan is no longer here, Ron is on the hot seat. Period. End of discussion. So that was number one. Like, wow, that, like, what Big Doug said could actually have happened had Sean Payton not taken the job, had that guy got the bid and became the new owner of this organization. He could have been hired and Ron could have been fired like that. The second thing that I thought about immediately was, we're never going to get a guy the caliber of Sean Payton to come here until Dan is gone. Did you hear the way that he talked about it? And my third and final point kind of ties into the second one, which is Sean Payton wanted to know what in the hell happened to this program. And you heard him lay out what this used to be. And as a fan of this team, it sickens me to my core to hear people talk of yesteryear with such reverence. And everyone knows what this organization used to be. Ron, when he first got here, all he wanted to talk about is what this organization was like back in the 80s when he was a member of the Bears and they had to come to RFK, and how tough of an environment this was to play in. And I was one of the best environments in all of the NFL. And all of those guys that are older understand what this used to be. Sean Payton was like, look, when I broke into the league, I spent my first couple of years in Philly, my next 4 in Dallas or with the Giants. And then he was with Bill Parcells in Dallas. And this organization stood for something. He said it was one of the 6 pillars of this league. And a lot of you are too young to understand just how important Washington was to the NFL. They were the Patriots. In the 80s, in the early 90s, they were the gold standard in the NFL. And to see how far we've fallen and to listen to him say, he was coaching with the Saints. You remember the game when they came in, Jameis Winston beat us. He came in, he said he looked around the stadium and it was first of all, it was half filled and a third of it was Saints fans. And he's like, what the hell happened to this place? Dan Snyder happened to this place. And so that sickens me to hear that because we've heard it so many times from so many different people and we know that it's true. We know what has existed here and we know how to rid ourselves of it, but we just can't. And it sickens me to know that we can't get a guy. The last time we were going to get a guy like him was Mike Shanahan. And we saw how that ended, right? We're never going to get another guy like Sean Payton until Dan Snyder's gone. Which leads me to my final point. Should I be nervous about the prospects of Dan selling this, organization or no? Am I tripping? Should I be nervous? I'm starting to get a little nervous, and I haven't been throughout this entire process. I've been reassured by people I trust that this is going to take place, whether he wants it to or not. But I'm not sure that if Dan, because I told you guys the last time we talked, Dan set a hard line in the sand. I want $7 billion. And he can be a hard ass. And in my mind, I said, do you really think a guy that at one point said, all caps, never going to change the name, a guy that swore up and down he wasn't going to sell this team, he wasn't going anywhere, a guy that was defiant and has been his entire career as an owner and has never done things the easy nor right way, do you really think that this thing is going to go over smoothly just like that? Do you really think he's just going to hand over the team without any issues? You don't think he's going to make us sweat? He's already shitted all over us for the better part of 2 decades. You think he's just going to walk away quietly into the night without this being a long, drawn-out, frustrating, and arduous process? My mind says, you got to be out of your damn mind if you think it's going to be anything other than a nightmare to get this guy to sell. The other part of my brain is saying, nah, he's going to take the money, he's going to go, and he's just going to rid himself of what's become a major headache for him and his family. I know better. And nothing about Daniel Snyder's reign of terror over this organization says that he's going to leave without making this hard. And I think the way that he's making it hard is he set the price point at $7 billion. There aren't many people that have that kind. That's not walking around money. In order to come in and buy the franchise, you have to have 25% of what it's going to take to buy it. So you've got to have 25% of $7 billion. Most billionaires don't even have that kind of money sitting around. Liquid assets, right? They got to string together all of the things that they have that make their net worth, $4 or $5 billion, and they got to start pouring into. Bezos is the only guy that has that kind of bread, and he knows it. If he doesn't get his $7 bill, right? If he doesn't get his $7 billion, he can just say, I'm not selling. I want what I want, or I'm not selling. Then the league can step in and say, okay, fine. We're going to take a vote at the league meetings in March. What if they don't get the necessary votes? Like, I think you have to have 24 of the 32 owners vote yes to oust him. What if there are 9 owners that are like, nah, man, I ain't on board with this shit? That's all it takes. 9 owners to be like, nah, what if it was me? I don't know if they have 24 votes. Should I think I'm talking myself into, because I said this all along, bro, until this shit happens, it ain't happening. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself, bro, this shit is happening. And I've been on that path this entire time, but what if? I don't want myself to go down this road, but what if Dan okey dokes us again? It would be the ultimate F you to every single fan that's left. I tricked you. I tricked you. I tricked you. I tricked you. Am I tripping? Somebody make me feel like I'm tripping, please. Somebody reassure me that this shit is going down. You've got nothing to be concerned about. Because I'm telling you right now, that's not how I'm feeling right now. And this is the first time that I'm starting to sweat a bit. Because the bid started at, the first round of bids was at 6.2. I'm hearing that the next round of bids, that shit's going down. And there are only like 2 or 3 guys even still in the hunt. Because the number is just too damn high. See, the Broncos number was right in a lot of people's wheelhouse. That was $4.2 billion. 4 or 5.2, whatever the hell. We're talking 7. I don't know, man. I'm starting to get a little shaky. Somebody reassure me that I'm tripping, please. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on another installment of Command Post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I want to say this. I'm late to this. I've been meaning to do this for like 6 shows, and I keep forgetting. But rest in paradise to the best GM this organization has ever had, and one Bobby Beathard. Bobby Beathard was the best thing that ever happened to this organization, along with Joe Gibbs. I think it's 1A, 1B with those two. He was the construct of the roster that ultimately won Joe Gibbs 3 Super Bowls in 11 years. And that 1981 draft and some of the free agents that he was able to acquire will go down in history as one of the greatest drafts known to mankind. It's the greatest draft of this franchise's history, and it's not even remotely close. And it was literally the foundation of what built the 3 Super Bowl championships here in Washington. So Bobby Beathard passed away last week, and I kept forgetting to acknowledge his passing. It's a major one for this organization because of what he meant and what he did for this organization. Without Bobby Beathard, we don't have 3 Super Bowl rings. It's as simple as that. You know, it's similar to what Jimmy Johnson did in Dallas. He wasn't there for the last Super Bowl, but it was because of what Jimmy did, the foundation that he laid, that Barry Switzer just came in and the party kept going and they won another Super Bowl. But that's still charged to Jimmy Johnson's account. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with Bobby Beathard. He wasn't necessarily here for that last Super Bowl. Charlie Casserly, I believe, was the GM then, but still all Bobby Beathard, man. You know, the remnants of his impact was still there. So I digress, man. Just wanted to say that because I hadn't said it yet, and I should be ashamed of myself because I hadn't said it already. But in any event, you guys take care. If anything happens, I'll be here. We'll be live this week on Wednesday before I take a small little vacay, but we'll reconvene on Wednesday unless something happens prior to that. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your evening. Eagles lose. I know a lot of you are celebrate. Damn it, the Eagles lost, but Jalen Hurts is really good. We got a problem on our hands. Sam Howell better be good or we're screwed. I just want to tell you guys that, but we'll talk, man. We'll talk. Anyway, you guys have a good one. Take care.
LouieTeeNetwork.